Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your good work, your service, your testimony. Mr. Abrams, does Maduro survive the year? And what can we do to maximize the chances that the answer to that question is no?
Well, we obviously hope he does not survive the year, and we are working hard to make that happen. What needs to happen for that to occur? The Venezuelan people have to react against this election. The international support of I think it's 59 countries, and we'd hope to add to that, have to reject this election as a complete fraud. We need more sanctions, personal sanctions of the sort the EU, Canada, the Rio Treaty countries have done, travel restrictions. Here's a case where more is better because they put more pressure on the regime. And we need to continue in the case of particularly the Iran-Venezuela relationship to try to prevent it from growing.
So, do I understand correctly that Maduro was on a plane, he was ready to leave, he'd given it up, and the Russians called him and convinced him to stay? Is that right? And what changed in his calculus that caused him to get off that plane?
I don't know if it's right. I've heard several stories about it. One version is it was his wife who left, who actually did leave. Another is that he wasn't on a plane, but he was going to get on a plane, and the Russian ambassador met with him and persuaded him, stay, we're behind you. But those are, I don't have firm intelligence of that. Those are different stories. I think, the day will come when he's going to have to make the decision of where he is safest, fleeing to a place like Cuba or Russia, or is he safest staying in Venezuela? Because then we can't extradite him.
Now, I would think one of the important questions on that is where the Venezuelan military lines up, and in particular their generals and admirals. What do we know in terms of the calculus those military leaders are engaging in right now about what's good for their future, what's good for their families, what's good for their country, although I'm not sure with many of them that third question is the predominant question.
Our impression is they're thinking. Some of them are ideologically Chavistas, most are not. Some of them are criminals, most are not. So they're on a spectrum here in how they view that regime. Many are trying to figure out what happens to me. And it's probably the case, we've heard this from a lot of people, that the opposition has not spoken clearly enough about the questions of guarantees and amnesty and so forth for some behavior. There have been those kinds of amnesties in every country that's gone from dictatorship to democracy, in Latin America, for that matter, in Europe, South Africa. So they're thinking about that. And we do try to get messages through to the people in the high command, sometimes publicly saying, look, Venezuela needs a modernized, paid military, and you're not going to get it from Maduro. We need to reestablish the kind of mill-mill relationship we once had.
So what more, in terms of carrot and stick, can Congress do and can the administration do to change the calculus for the generals and admirals so that they come to the unequivocal conclusion it is much, much worse for me if Maduro stays in power than if this illegitimate regime is toppled and if instead you have a democratically legitimate government in Venezuela?
I actually think the best thing that we could do would be a bipartisan expression that this policy is not going to change. It has support in both parties. We are not going to let up on the sanctions. We are not going to let up on the criminal prosecutions. We're going to stay with it. So this is going to keep on going year after year until this regime is replaced.
Well, I think that's a good invitation, and I know this committee has acted in a bipartisan manner before. I think that would be a very positive thing if this committee were able to come together and do that again to make clear that Maduro will have no friends regardless of what happens in an election 91 days from now. Let me ask you about a different aspect of Venezuela, which is, as you know, for over 2 years, 6 Americans, and 5 of them from Texas, have been imprisoned in Venezuela related to charges manufactured about their work for Citgo. They have missed birthdays, they've missed weddings, they've missed funerals. They're imprisoned in inhumane conditions. They're subject to abuse. Their families continue to live in fear for their health and well-being. Last week, 2 of the men were re-released to house arrest, but a lot more needs to be done. What is the status of your efforts to make sure that the Citgo Six are brought home?
We're in touch with the families. We're in touch with anyone who is trying to help, and that would include Governor Richardson, who was down there a couple of weeks ago. We have made, and we continue to make, I guess I'd call it a global diplomatic effort with the governments, for example, of Mexico, of Spain, of Argentina, with the Vatican. We keep asking ourselves, who can we go back to? Who's somebody new who has influence in Caracas? What can we do to increase the pressure or the inducements on the regime? Moving 2 to house arrest, again, is a positive step. We hope that the next step is the other 4 go to house arrest as a step toward getting home. It's since 2017, it's getting on to 2.5 years now, and they belong home with their families. These men have never had a trial.
Thank you very much.